Hello and welcome to About Documentary, where curiosity slows down and science has room to breathe. Tonight, we embark on a quiet journey far back into a time that exists more in imagination than memory, a moment before time as we know it, before clocks or calendars measured days. The world was raw, unpredictable, and new, and the first humans were just beginning to open their eyes to it. What was it like at the dawn of humanity? What kind of planet awaited our first steps, both familiar and strangely alien? Maybe you are listening in the evening, or perhaps deep into the night. Picture a world without cities, machines, or even history, just air, light, wind, and life. If that vision brings calm or wonder, leaving a like or subscribing helps this quiet corner of reflection reach others. Let's drift into the story, where humanity's beginning was not a single moment but a long awakening beneath shifting skies and the heartbeat of the earth itself. The dawn of humanity did not arrive with trumpets or miracles. It unfolded slowly, over millions of years, in ways unnoticed by those living it. Imagine the savannas of what is now East Africa. The air is warm, dry, filled with insect hum. Heat shimmers on the horizon. Grass bends and waves. Among scattered trees moves a creature unlike the others, upright, cautious, alert. It has no name yet, at least not one we would recognize, but in its eyes is something familiar: curiosity. That's where it begins, not with cities or language, but with a glance, a silent what if. The world around that first curiosity was generous and cruel. Climate shifts, volcanic eruptions, cycles of drought and rain shaped the land. The Great Rift Valley, a scar across East Africa, hosted forests, lakes, and grasslands that appeared and vanished with the Earth's rhythm. Here, early humans learned adaptation not through strength, but through awareness. They watched, remembered, and slowly, invisible advantages took root, forming the foundation of something entirely new. By then, Earth had already witnessed the rise and fall of continents, oceans, and species. Dinosaurs vanished 60 million years prior. Mammals had colonized every niche. The nights were darker than any we know now, the stars impossibly close. Perhaps an ancestor tilted their head to the sky, feeling the first stirrings of wonder at the vastness above, a motion that continues in us today. Yet the world was dangerous. Lions, leopards, and saber-toothed cats roamed the grasslands. Elephants and ancient buffalo reshaped the land with their herds. Crocodiles lurked in rivers. Even storms and wind carried peril. Survival demanded constant attention, which slowly cultivated intelligence. By noticing patterns, where fruit ripened, where water gathered, where shadows hid danger, humans built inner maps of both space and possibility. Hands that once grasped branches began experimenting with stones, not yet tools, but a nascent idea of shaping. A spark of thought flickered, to hold not just for what it is, but for what it could become. This invisible moment may mark the truest beginning of humanity. Life teemed around them. Sounds carried meaning. Rustling grass could signify danger or food. Smells guided more than sight, hearing connected them before language existed. Social bonds strengthened. Alone, survival was fragile. Together, humans could watch, defend, and share. Community was not invented, it was essential. Nights brought stillness and fear, yet also closeness. Fires came later, but ancestors huddled for warmth, listening to distant predators. Without glowing screens or artificial lights, darkness was complete. The Milky Way arched brighter than any city skyline. Sitting under it, hearing steady breaths, humans felt a connection between body, earth, and sky that needed no words. Food was a daily challenge. Early humans were omnivores: roots, berries, small animals, insects, eggs, and scavenged remains of larger prey. Observing animal behavior, learning landscapes for hunting or hiding, added knowledge to the group. This memory, passed through imitation and habit, became the first culture. Ice ages, droughts, and floods forced movement, adaptation, and teaching. Flexibility evolved as inheritance. Bipedalism freed the hands, evolving grip and dexterity. Brains expanded to manage new demands. Communication grew complex, gestures, sounds, and glances carried layered meanings. survival was never guaranteed. Fragile existence created resilience. Children learned without words, life's rhythm, birth, growth, struggle, rest, etched awareness into every generation. Our instincts, to gather, seek companionship, marvel at fire or the stars, are echoes of that ancient world. The first breath of humans was raw, fear, exhaustion, or surprise under the African sun, amidst sounds older than language. Yet that breath was shared across generations. The air itself is an archive of life, connecting us to ancestors and extinct creatures alike. The dawn of humanity was also a mental awakening, memory, anticipation, imagination. An ancestor imagined a better tool or wondered about fire. Creativity emerged, paving the way for language, art, belief, civilization. At first, life was raw experience, yet seeds of understanding, sharing, and companionship had already grown. Consciousness flickered in those small, almost invisible moments. Earth itself was restless. Volcanoes rumbled, rivers changed, wind carried distant scents. Mountains rose and eroded, oceans appeared and vanished. Continents drifted, Africa once part of Gondwana. Tectonic plates shifted slowly. By the time humans walked upright, the planet was already extreme, glaciers, volcanic plains, grasslands, all shaping opportunity and risk. The atmosphere had evolved over billions of years. Cyanobacteria released oxygen, rusted oceans, and slowly created habitability. By early human times, the air was breathable, yet dust and ash often veiled horizons. Ice ages altered rainfall, vegetation, and migration. Sea levels rose and fell, exposing and hiding coasts, connecting ecosystems. Every shift molded adaptation. East Africa's rifts and volcanic soils concentrated life. Lakes provided stability during droughts. Key steps in evolution, stone tool use, social cooperation, emerged here. Fires mesmerized early humans, the oceans offered resources and tools. Plants, animals, and humans all adapted. Human anatomy, from legs to sweat glands, reflects this world's demands. The sky, slightly different from today, inspired wonder. Cycles of ice, fire, and rain sculpted resilience, memory, and creativity. Abundance allowed experimentation, scarcity demanded ingenuity. Humans evolved imagination rather than just physical traits. Landscapes became mental maps. Footprints in volcanic ash, like at Liole, Tanzania, preserve the earliest traces of companionship, movement, and life. Predators and threats shaped vigilance, the same landscapes offered opportunity. Early humans were inseparable from their environment, food, shelter, danger, and comfort intertwined. Later species, Homo habilis and Homo erectus, left stone tools and subtle signs of intelligence. Each landscape became a stage for mind interacting with matter, shaping the first flickers of culture. Fire. Understanding another's intent, mood, or fear could mean survival. Eyes met across the glow, silent conversations unfolding in a language older than words. The fire became the first classroom for emotional intelligence, teaching early humans not only how to read the land or animals, but how to read one another. Stories may have begun here, in shadow and warmth. A gesture of sharing food, a warning sign, or a mimic of a predator's cry, each became a building block of communication. By the firelight, imagination and memory intertwined. Tales of hunts, escapes, and wonders could be retold, passed from one generation to the next. Each retelling sharpened observation, strengthened strategy, and reinforced social bonds. Beyond survival, fire created the first moments of introspection. Humans could sit, still and awake, and consider what had been and what might be. The rhythm of flames mirrored thought itself, rising, falling, unpredictable, alive. Patterns emerged not only in the world outside but inside minds now capable of abstraction. The first sparks of creativity, of reflection, of planning far ahead, were born in those glowing circles. Even mundane acts, like cooking roots or roasting meat, became experiments. How long before food was safe to eat? Which materials burned best? Could fire drive animals toward a trap or signal to another group? Observation turned into hypothesis, curiosity became testing ground. These simple experiments laid the foundation for culture, science, and art alike. In this way, fire was the great equalizer. It bridged day and night, predator and prey, individual and group. It brought warmth and safety, but also responsibility and cooperation. A single flame carried lessons about life, death, and everything in between. Humans were no longer entirely at the mercy of the environment, they had begun to participate actively in shaping it. The fire also marked a subtle but profound shift in perception. Darkness was no longer absolute. Shadows, once harbingers of fear, became canvases for imagination. The mind learned to play with light, to anticipate, to invent. The first understanding of temporality, the idea that one could act now to influence the future, took root. To keep a flame alive was to grasp a small piece of eternity. And so, fire became both tool and teacher, companion and mirror. It illuminated the night and revealed the human mind to itself. From these flickering circles, a new kind of awareness spread, of place, of others, of potential. The landscapes of memory were now paired with landscapes of cognition. The earth held footprints, bones, and ash alike, all etched with lessons in survival, observation, and imagination. Eventually, the first humans would leave Africa, carrying fire, knowledge, and culture into new lands. They would face unfamiliar animals, climates, and challenges. But the skills honed beside those earliest flames, the attentiveness, cooperation, empathy, and curiosity, traveled with them. Across deserts, mountains, and frozen plains, the fire in their hands mirrored the fire in their minds. The story of fire is, therefore, not just the story of warmth or light. It is the story of awakening. It is the moment when humans began to take the first deliberate steps toward mastery of both the external world and the internal one. Fire made possible safety, community, reflection, art, and imagination. It was the first stage on a journey that would eventually carry humans into cities, civilizations, and beyond. And even now, when we sit by a campfire or light a candle, the echoes of that first discovery resonate deep within us. The flicker of flame still calls forth attention, memory, and wonder. The fire that once held the night at bay also illuminated the potential of the human mind, a flame that has never truly gone out. The last skills were passed not through formal teaching but through imitation, observation, and shared experience. A child watching an adult strike a stone learned not only the technique, but the patience, the rhythm, the respect for the material. Each successful tool reinforced understanding, each failure offered correction. Knowledge became tangible, embodied in objects that outlived the moment of creation. As tools improved, so did possibilities. Sharper edges meant meat could be cut faster, heights processed more effectively, and wood shaped into shelters. With each advancement, humans could spend less time struggling against basic needs and more time observing, planning, imagining. Toolmaking was not merely survival, it was a new dialogue with the world. One had to predict, experiment, adapt. The mind was trained to think ahead, to see not just what was, but what could be. The legacy of these early experiences still echoes. Every time we look at a night sky, build a tool, or gather around a fire, we trace a path that began hundreds of thousands of years ago. A path that led from survival to culture, from instinct to imagination, from watching the world to shaping it and understanding it. The fire burned, the stone was struck, the stars rotated overhead. And the human mind, at last awake, began its long, unbroken journey into thought, memory, and meaning. Look upon their work and feel the same mixture of curiosity, awe, and recognition. The marks they left were not simply images, they were the first bridges across time, linking the present with the deep past. Each line, each shadow, each handprint carried the rhythm of life, memory, and thought, a testament to the human impulse to reach beyond the immediate, to capture the fleeting and make it endure. Art became both record and question. It recorded what was seen, what was hunted, what was celebrated, and what was feared. It asked what it meant to exist, to belong, to act, and to observe. In the quiet of caves, by the flicker of fire, humans discovered that expression could transform perception. The act of creating was itself a kind of understanding, a way to make sense of the world, to negotiate existence, and to share it with others who might come long after. Through these first artistic acts, humanity learned that imagination could traverse distance and time, just as migration had done across the earth. The visual language of the caves complemented the spoken language of firelight, gestures, and shared attention. Together, they formed the twin roots of culture, one that communicated experience and instruction, the other that captured memory, emotion, and aspiration. And so, in the darkness of ancient caves, humans not only made art, they made themselves. They transformed silence into dialogue, thought into image, and observation into story. Every handprint, every painted beast, every spiraling pattern was a claim on continuity, a declaration that existence mattered, and that humans were both witnesses to and participants in the unfolding world. From these beginnings, culture would grow, language would evolve, and imagination would carry humanity across seas, continents, and eventually, into the cosmos itself. The cave walls remain as enduring reminders that before words, before cities, before civilization, there were humans striving to understand, to connect, and to leave traces of themselves in a vast, ever-changing world. Humanity began simply, living and moving with the rhythms of the earth. Around firelight, the first stories were told, not to entertain, but to understand. Memory became pattern, pattern became story. Early storytellers wove lessons from events, explaining the world and linking the known to the unknown. Children listened, elders nodded, and through repetition, knowledge traveled farther than any person could walk. Stories shaped meaning. A hunt became narrative, thunder and stars became voices and ancestors. Myth arose not from falsehood, but from observation and wonder. Stories taught survival, empathy, foresight, and the rhythm of life. Around the fire, imagination was shared, becoming a collective dream, binding people into community. The first storytellers were teachers, listeners became storytellers, preserving identity and culture through memory. As the climate shifted, humanity began to settle. Nomadic movement slowed, and people learned to cultivate land, tend animals, and build permanent homes. Agriculture introduced new rhythms, planting, waiting, harvesting, and required patience, foresight, and cooperation. Settlements brought social structures, leadership, labor division, and shared responsibility. Life became tied to place, the land itself became part of identity. The rhythms of growth, death, and renewal were mirrored in ritual, art, and early religion, creating a deeper connection between humans and nature. Settled life enabled accumulation and observation. Knowledge became tangible through tools, pottery, and eventually writing. Record-keeping transformed memory into permanence, extending stories, laws, and calendars across generations. Civilization arose not from invention alone, but from the patient layering of observation, imagination, and cooperation. The first cities flourished near rivers, lifelines of water, food, and trade, and their structure reflected both the rhythm of nature and human intention. Even as settlements grew into cities, and knowledge became complex, the essence of early humanity endured. The patience of the hunter lived in the care of the farmer, the curiosity of the wanderer persisted in the vision of builders and astronomers. Civilization did not erase its roots, it grew from them. Storytelling, imagination, and observation remained central, guiding human understanding of the world and of itself. Memory, myth, and ritual preserved lessons, fostered empathy, and bound generations. Humanity learned not only to survive, but to reflect, to plan, to record, and to create. Civilizations were built from these foundations: story, observation, and care, layer upon layer, from firelight to clay tablets, from wandering to permanence. The long shadow of dawn stretches still, linking every sunrise, every story, and every human endeavor to those first sparks of imagination and understanding. From the first storyteller's voice to the rise of cities, humanity's journey is one of continuity, curiosity, and the slow unfolding of awareness, a story still being told, still unfinished, still reaching toward the light. Stone shaped memory as much as it shaped matter. The first flakes were ephemeral, Yet the patterns of their creation persisted in the rhythm of practice, the habits of attention, and the culture of sharing knowledge. Places where tools were made, riverbanks, rocky outcrops, cave floors, became sacred in subtle ways. They were workshops, classrooms, gathering points. The landscape itself held memory of human intention. Every chip, every discarded flake, was a small mark of presence, a record of thought made concrete. With tools came experimentation. Stones were tested on meat, bone, wood, and plants. Different angles produced different results. One learned which rock was hard enough yet brittle enough to fracture predictably. Observation and touch merged, the eyes and hands became instruments of analysis. Knowledge no longer lived only in the mind, it became physical, manipulable, shareable. A hand axe was a thought given form, a question answered by action. And so, stone and fire together began to reshape human life. Fire extended the day, offered warmth and light, stone extended ability, enabled modification of the environment, and gave permanence to skill. A meal could be cooked, meat sliced, wood shaped, shelter built, and through these acts, humans began to inscribe themselves upon the world. Each tool, each hearth, was a marker of agency. The earth had been shaped by wind and water for millennia. Now humans added their own marks, small at first, but cumulative, intentional, enduring. The process was slow, iterative, and intimate. Every generation learned to read the land, select resources, manipulate materials, and understand cause and effect. Innovation was not sudden, it was a conversation with time and nature, a dialogue between generations mediated by stone and fire. Each step forward was built on observation, trial, error, and care. The mind was being trained for abstraction, for planning, for imagination. Stone tools also demanded cooperation and social learning. A group working together could quarry rocks, share techniques, and ensure safety. Early humans learned that knowledge multiplied when shared, that a single discovery could benefit many. Communities became small networks of innovation, memory, and responsibility. The rhythms of daily life, tending fire, shaping stone, hunting, gathering, formed a foundation for the first social structures. The need to cooperate was reinforced by the environment and by tools themselves. Even beyond survival, tools changed perception. To strike stone accurately required focus, attention to detail, and the ability to visualize an outcome before it existed. It taught foresight and patience, and it nurtured imagination. What began as a simple cut or scrape gradually became experimentation, play, and expression. Each edge, groove, and flake was a story, a record of mind at work, a trace of thought in the physical world. And in this interplay of fire, stone, and human attention, the first sense of culture began to emerge. Rituals were implicit, tending the flame, crafting the tool, sharing food, observing the patterns of life and death around them. Knowledge was preserved not in writing but in repeated action and communal memory. The landscape, marked by hearths and flakes, became a repository of human presence, intelligence, and imagination. In these early acts, one can see the first outlines of what it means to be human. Awareness, planning, empathy, creativity, and connection, all coalesced in the rhythms of survival and the simple yet profound manipulation of the natural world. Fire illuminated night, stone made thought tangible. Together, they shaped not just the body and environment, but the mind, laying the groundwork for language, art, and civilization itself. Sit between fire and stars was to understand the human place in the universe. One hand could shape the world, the other could only reach toward it. One offered warmth, light, and sustenance, the other offered awe, reflection, and the sense of something greater than oneself. That duality, between action and observation, control and wonder, became central to the emerging human mind. The night sky also inspired imagination beyond survival. Patterns noticed in stars became early storytelling frameworks. Shapes suggested animals, people, and objects, or abstract forms that carried meaning for memory and communication. Stories were first spoken in gestures, in shared glances, in mimicry of movement, long before they were written or verbalized in full language. Each narrative tied the community together, reinforcing shared experience, teaching practical knowledge, and embedding cultural memory in the collective consciousness. The same impulse that shaped stone and fire now shaped story. Observation of celestial cycles also fostered prediction and planning. Humans noticed that certain stars appeared before rains, others before seasonal migrations. Knowledge of these cycles allowed groups to anticipate changes, schedule hunts, and track time with reliability. The sky became both guide and teacher. Humans learned to connect patterns in distant points of light with the rhythms of their own lives. From this came a sense of order, the first bridge between natural phenomena and intentional action. But even as patterns were learned and used, the stars remained untouchable. They could not be altered, hunted, or gathered. This permanence was humbling. It cultivated reflection and introspection. When sitting beside the fire, tending tools, preparing food, and gazing upward, early humans experienced an awareness that extended beyond immediate concerns. They began to ask questions without expecting answers. They began to think about time, change, and continuity. They began to imagine forces larger than themselves. This connection between fire, stone, and sky laid the foundations for abstract thought. Fire taught control and transformation, stone taught precision, planning, and permanence, the sky taught observation, continuity, and mystery. Together, they trained the mind to consider both the tangible and the intangible, the immediate and the eternal. The human brain, already reshaped by the demands of toolmaking and social cooperation, now had the scaffolding to explore ideas far beyond survival. By combining the lessons of earth and sky, humans began to cultivate memory, foresight, and narrative. Each generation could inherit knowledge encoded in stones, in patterns of fire tending, and in the positions of stars. Memory became externalized, stored in the environment, the tools, and the heavens. Learning was no longer purely trial and error, it was cumulative, shared, and reflective. In this way, the cosmos became part of human thought, not only as context but as collaborator in cognition. Eventually, the stars inspired symbolic thinking. Repetition in the heavens mirrored cycles on Earth: birth, growth, decay, and renewal. Such observation nurtured the ability to abstract, to assign meaning to signs, and to conceive of events beyond immediate perception. The earliest steps toward mathematics, calendars, ritual, and astronomy all had roots in these quiet hours beside the fire under the night sky. The human mind was learning to map the infinite onto the finite, to navigate complexity through attention, imagination, and memory. The duality of fire and sky, control and observation, remained central. One gave mastery, the other gave humility. One created possibility, the other inspired wonder. Between the two, humans developed a sense of self in relation to the world, capable of shaping and of being shaped, acting and reflecting, surviving and imagining. And in those moments, humanity began to understand itself not only as a participant in the natural order but as a thinker, a dreamer, and a witness to eternity.